matters entertainment, but also we take a look at what is happening in the world of news. Thank you so much for always keeping it TV47. It is time for Morning Cafe with me, Linda Alela. I'll be taking you through the day. It's an amazing session, and later on we'll have Nancy joining us for the entertainment segment. We'll also be having some bit of interviews in regards to the same. But before we delve into that, I am here to ensure that you're updated in what is happening in the world of news, where you are right here locally, continentally, and we cross borders to the rest of the world. So welcome on board once again. As I say, it's a pleasure to have you joining us. And I also have Ben Kinuth here, who's a lawyer, who's a motivational speaker, and equally a political analyst, who will be helping me go through the newspapers and the stories that we have prepared as a team. Thank you so much for always keeping it TV47. We'll also be having an interesting conversation this morning as we take a look at we commemorate the victims of torture. Remember, it is International Day for victims of torture, and we'll be getting a guest from IMLU, who's also an advocate, to delve deep into understanding how best we can deal this, how best we can make this a game of the past. Also taking a look at the levels of brutality that has been meted upon our people by the police, especially at this time of COVID-19. More cases being reported, and the cases continue being on the rise as different countries continue to ensure that they put up the measures of dealing with COVID-19, the lockdowns, talking of the curfews, and much more. So indeed, it's going to be a full-packed show for you, but it is going to be as interesting to ensure that we capture you all the way. We would love to get your feedback. Hashtag Morning Cafe at TV47 at Linda_Alela, our Twitter handles. You can also hit us on our Facebook page. That is TV47. We'll be streaming live and also on YouTube, TV47. So karibu sana this beautiful morning. Let's first of all pick the stories that we have from our team. And Sirisia Member of Parliament and his co-accused, Grace Wahungu, have been slapped with a 7-year jail term in prison or a 700 million shillings fine alternative. And of course, the two were found guilty of defrauding the National Cereals and Produce Board of over 300 million shillings. The two were shareholders in a company named Arad Supplies and General Contractors Limited, and pocketed the money despite supplying nothing to Cereals Board. Now the two have 2 weeks to file an appeal. And on that very story, Ben, I hope you're on standby as we take a look at it. The big story on the newspapers across, and we have the People's Daily with me right here, how top lawyers helped loot NCPB, and more details coming on board in regards to this particular loot that saw Sirisia Member of Parliament John Waluke and the co-accused Grace Saraipe Wahungu, facing it, as I have told you right there. And now the names of Ahmed Nasir Abdullahi, that is the Grand Mullah, and the name of course, a former that is the Deputy CJ, and Nancy Baraza, coming on board also in regards to what their law firms, played, or what role they played towards seeing that indeed this corruption deal happened. And it has been detailed on page 5 of the People's Daily. Waluke and Wahungu find nearly 2 billion in a fake maize importation, and also captured on the Standard newspaper as the big story. MPs loses his seat and has to pay 1 billion or serve 52 years historic court ruling, captured on page 2 and page 3 of the Standard newspaper. I'll come to you, Ben, to get your take in regards to the same, as many would look at it as a step towards the right direction on dealing with matters corruption right here in the country. What do you make of this whole affair?
Okay, wonderful. A very good morning. Thank you for having me here. I think this is one of Kenya's biggest achievement in the fight against corruption. It's a big achievement in the sense that not only are we able to do a correction of those who have committed the crime, because they need to go into a correctional facility That's a prison, they need to go there. But also we are able to recover the money that was stolen, and to recover it twice. Because the biggest challenge you've had is people steal money, they go to jail for a year or two, they come out, they enjoy the money that they stole. But now the Anti-Corruption and Economic Crimes Act has provided for a very good opportunity so that whatever monies are stolen, they are paid back in double. And that's a very good achievement for this country. Yeah.
All right, and now coming in of lawyers or different figures being named on this, of course, the late Jacob Juma, and now these revelations are playing out into the involvement of the likes of, notable lawyers, senior counsels for that matter, who have received payments in regards to ensuring that this is a success. Like the legal aspect of ensuring that these corrupt activities are done in the country. I mean, what does it speak of the legal system? What does it speak of the aspect of justice, and where does it land us in seeking or getting this justice anyway?
I think there's a huge challenge here. It's not only a challenge in the sense that lawyers took money, but also you remember there's a racket that shows there are companies or people who are unnamed. I think these were very powerful people in this country. It's our hope that the DPP will get into the matter even deeper, get to know exactly who are these people we are being told they appear to be unknown, because they are known. These are bank accounts that the banks themselves can be able to reveal to us. But coming to the issue of the lawyers, there's a huge challenge there. Being one of them, one I can say is there's something called the Advocates Remuneration Order, which provides the scale within which advocates are supposed to be remunerated for their work. So what we need to do is to check how much money moved from which lawyer to which lawyer, and you check that vis-a-vis the Advocates Remuneration Order. What were they being paid for? For what services had they offered? Because usually for us lawyers, you hear when you want to charge an amount that you feel is not enough, that's when you refer to the Advocates Remuneration Order. But if you're overcharging the client, you don't refer to the Advocates Remuneration Order. So we need to know, for someone to receive 40 billion, why was 40 billion going into an advocate's account? What was this matter that warranted a lawyer to be paid 40 billion in one transaction? And I think it's incumbent upon the DPP to go deeper and to get us more suspects who we can then turn into convicts like we did in this other case. Yeah. All
right, and indeed the figures or the tree of how the monies were spent or what a firm received what captured here on page 4, that is of the People's Daily, as you can see, coming to what indeed Nancy Baraza and Ahmed Nasir's firm got. So Nancy Baraza legal fees was 5 million, and Ahmed Nasir and Abdi Hadir and co-advocates legal fees was 40 million. And just a breakdown of how this money was used, or how this money was spent, and who got it, and what chain it took. So it's all here. You've been given a breakdown, so you can always grab and copy and you check a look at that. But moving on to a different story, also still on the first page or the front page. And we're talking matters COVID-19, and the numbers projected right here. We now stand at 5,384 as a country confirmed cases, and that is 1,857 recoveries and 132 deaths reported so far. 178 people tested positive as of yesterday from samples of 155, 314,000 samples tested across the country. And what President Uhuru Kenyatta says now, captured on page 9 of the People's Daily, is that there's so much that will take him to ensure that he reopens the economy, and he says his decision lies squarely on what the county's capacity on responding to COVID-19 would be like, or the new cases that will have been recorded. What do you make of this? Are you one of the few people who think that it is time that we proceed to have activities go back to normalcy?
Thank you. I think we have a president who shows to care for this nation. There are times we fight him, but on this one we need to commend him. If he reopens the borders and people move to counties like Siaya, where there are 10 hospital beds. By the way, this is a county that has got more MCAs than hospital beds for people who would be sick. Then what it means is that we shall be devolving a big challenge to the counties that they cannot be able to handle. So I think it's only responsible that counties get to that basic minimum of 300 isolation beds, then the economy can be opened up. Yeah.
All right, there you go, and captured on page 9, like I said, and we can only hope to get good results or reports from the levels of county, though straining. But then again, there's been so much money that has been channeled towards seeing that is a success. So the president says his decision lies squarely with counties' capacity and preparedness to respond to new coronavirus infections. There you go, with different, virtual meetings across Africa, different counties, just to see to it that we are able to deal with this. Looking at the genesis of the troubles that we are facing right here economically, the president, that is President Uhuru Kenyatta, imposed countrywide curfew in April. He also ordered closure of entry and exits in 4 regions considered most affected by cases of COVID-19, and Kenyans have since been appealing to the president to relax some of these curfew and cessation directives. President has now said or says that counties must assure him that they can contain spread of COVID-19, and so far 8,000 number of health workers expected to be recruited in the fight against coronavirus pandemic. So we can only hope for the best, like Ben rightfully puts it. And we know moving forward that this is what we're going to do towards ensuring that we deal with this. And to some bit of politics also. And Mudavadi's ANC in limbo over party leadership wars. This is captured on page 9 of the People's Daily. And there's been so much activities on matters politics right here in the country. Now, Registrar of Political Parties Andy Ritu has directed Amani National Congress to respond to petition seeking to have all National Executive Council, that is NEC, members refrain from acting for the party. What do you make of this and the political activities that have played in the country so much? I mean, it looks like we are set for surprises by the time it's 2022.
I think there's a lot of realignment going on, and people have realized that even if COVID is here with us, there will be an election in 2022. And unfortunately, we do not have leaders, because when you have leaders, they think about the next generation. What we have is politicians thinking about the next election. And so when you see the wrangles happening in ANC, is because our parties are not founded on principle, they are founded on personalities. So it's about where does this big personality move to and how does he behave. And we are going to see a lot of realignments moving forward. And that's why I've been telling people, you need to relax and stop thinking so much about politics, because politicians will take you somewhere and leave you. The people who told us that, for example, DP Ruto is corrupt, have left that part and on the other side saying now he's okay. The people who told us that the president is incompetent have left, and now they're on the other side saying that President Uhuru is the best president that there ever was. So when you follow some of these politicians as a Kenyan, you end up having a heartache. Because I remember the other day Moses Kuria was telling Kenyans, oh, Ruto is a very corrupt man. Today Moses Kuria is telling us, no, President Uhuru is the problem. Now, if you had followed Moses Kuria, for example, and gone to the other direction, you'd find it very hard to also follow him in this other direction. So what's happening in ANC is interesting. You might see even Mudavadi himself leave and form another party. I mean, just the other day, this politician, Mwangi Kiunjuri, created a party after he didn't tell us whether he dissolved the other one, GNU, that doesn't even have an MCA. So it's interesting. I mean, our politics is about people, not about, it's not about principle. Yeah.
All right, sadly. And speaking of politics, more on that, Waiguru's anxious moments as a day of reckoning arise. And of course, today we're set to know what way for Waiguru. You've been following up on this, and I've spoken about it for the longest of time right here. And our team also worked on something. So let's take a look at it as we come to you. And Senate will today determine the fate of embattled Kirinyaga Governor Anne Waiguru. So the Senate Select Committee that was probing her impeachment spent the better part of the day preparing the report that will be tabled in Senate today. And as Elizabeth Mutuku now reports, the Senate is also on trial, and its decision on the matter will be a verdict on its image.
The 11-member committee will table its report in the House on Friday. Speaker Kenneth Lusaka, while calling for the special sitting, said the business to be transacted at the sitting shall be consideration of the report of the special committee on the proposed removal from office by impeachment of Governor Anne Mumbi Waiguru.
Council, through the chair, studying Kirinyaga County Assembly studying orders.
The Malala-led committee can either uphold the allegations against the governor or reverse it. The 11-member committee will determine if the allegations were substantiated or not, and if the allegations were not substantiated, then no action will be taken against her. However, the House may take a vote on the allegations if the allegations are substantiated.
Any transgression on any law is a transgression on the people of Kenya, and it's a transgression on the Republic of Kenya. The members of the County Assembly of Kirinyaga County, 23 out of 33, returned a verdict. There was not even a favorable vote in favor of the governor during the impeachment. Therefore, honorable members, the people of Kirinyaga exercise their sovereignty through the elected representatives under Article 1.
Waiguru is facing charges, among others, violation of procurement laws, amongst other charges, though Waiguru denied all charges.
This has meant taking political decisions, including to support His Excellency the President in his BBI initiative, which I believe is in the interest of Kirinyaga and all Kenya. Honorable Senators, my stand has made me enemies with people of deep influence and deep pockets, inside and outside my county.
The committee has promised to be fair to both sides.
A special sitting that we will be expected to table the report. So I would like to invite all Kenyans to anticipate a fair ruling on Friday afternoon, and I believe by then we shall have come up with a ruling.
23 out of 33 MCAs in Kirinyaga voted to oust Waiguru. The outcome of the select committee will determine whether the nation will continue having faith on the Senate or not. Elizabeth Mutiku, TV47 Nairobi.
Yes, Ben Kinuthia, what do you make of that? What do you expect?
Interesting. I'm expecting Senate to exonerate Waiguru.
Oh.
And the reason I expect this to happen is because I was looking the other day. The people who told us that Waititu was guilty are the ones who are telling us that Anne Mumbi Waiguru is innocent. And the people who told us that Waititu was innocent are the people who are telling us that Anne Mumbi Waiguru is guilty. It tells you of the fluid nature of our politics. That on the one time you think that these people are standing on principle, but when you look at them, you realize that it's got everything to do with interest and not principle. But having said that, in 2017, when the elections were being held, there was a lot of clamor and noise, people saying that Waiguru has stolen NYS money and so on and so forth. And the people of Kirinyaga said, no, give us our thief, she's our thief. And they voted for her. So I think it's only fair for us to give them a chance to enjoy the next 2.5 years with the governor that they bequeathed upon themselves, knowing very well that she had questionable character because of the NYS scandal. But also having said that, there's the issue of the MCAs who impeached Waiguru. And if you ask me, the bulk of those people cannot recover back their seats if a by-election was held today. They claim to be representatives of the people of Kirinyaga. Yes, they are, because they were voted in by the people of Kirinyaga. But if a by-election was held today in every ward, how many of them would recapture back their seats? It tells you that they are unpopular, and if they are unpopular, then therefore they do not represent the actual interests of the people of Kirinyaga. And I had the opportunity to watch on TV as the drama unfolded when she was being impeached. In my opinion, that did not look like an impeachment. It looked like a drama in a field. It was a lot of chaos, and I don't think that's what our democracy should be. I think moving forward, the impeachment of governors needs to be a sane process. It needs to appear mature. It needs to be seen to be a process that is being done by lawmakers and not hooligans. And finally, having said that, I think also we need to move to a situation whereby the impeachment of a governor is seen to be actually the impeachment of a governor, as opposed to the impeachment of a governor that appears to be having other hands coming from extraneous parts. Yeah.
All right, well, that's interesting. We are waiting to see what will play out. And just also the cartoon edition of the day on People's Daily. I don't know whether you're able to see this. Why is the crocodile dancing reggae? Waiguru trying to run right there, and the crocodile impeachment coming on board. And why is it dancing reggae? I would want to assume that this question is a polite way of, confirming what you just said, that there's a likelihood that they are going to exonerate her. So it's an interesting moment, and we await that. As you have seen, Elizabeth Mutuku will be on ground to ensure that we are well updated on the same. And comments edition also, or maybe editorial edition, describes invading solitaire playing Waiguru privacy. Well, that one, yes, is gone by the winds, but it spoke lots of volumes in regards to how serious, Waiguru was taking this particular case. So we wait for the day. It is today, and we'll be updating you on our subsequent bulletins. And crossing over to another story also right here, still on the same page, that is page 2 of the People's Daily. Surveillance to be enhanced after another Gikomba fire. I think you've seen this, and it is quite unfortunate that again, we have probably sat on a different podium and discussed the Gikomba fires for the longest of time. I mean, what do you make of this?
I think it's a high time the people in Gikomba also woke up, because I don't know what is this obsession with Gikomba as a location. You wake up and realize that the people who come to buy things from Gikomba come from Rongai, Ngong, Kawangware, Kayole, Dandora, Umoja, and all these other places. But there's an obsession with every trader wanting to have a stall in Gikomba. And I think it's a high time we moved forward and decentralized Gikomba completely. The solution to Gikomba fires is not coming up with the cameras they were saying. The solution to Gikomba fires is making sure that someone does not leave Rongai to come and buy clothes in Gikomba. Someone does not. So if we had to decide about the 17 constituencies we have in Nairobi, and we said, let us have one market in every of the 17 constituencies. And that's the same challenge we are having with Marikiti market, that everybody who wants potatoes or tomatoes must come to Marikiti. Why? And these people are living as far off as Githurai. We need to come up with a situation where every constituency is able to have one market of its own, and a clothes market of its own.
And a modern market for that matter.
So that because Gikomba is a prime place, we've been talking of traffic congestion. I wish we turned that land into a bus park, where buses from that direction come to this place. It's a high time we moved forward and started having a more seasoned approach to these things. Because even the people who sell mitumba in Mombasa, some of them come to Gikomba to buy the bales so that they can take back to Mombasa. And we remind you, these things came by ship. Zinatoka kwa meli, they come to Gikomba, and then they find their way back to all these other different places. It's a high time we said, okay, there's too much money flowing in Gikomba, there's too much circulation of people in Gikomba. It's a high time we decentralize the whole market.
And our reporter Eli Logova was there yesterday. Let's take a look at what he gathered. Those are the pictures of what played out. Let's listen into that.
The early Thursday morning fire razed down a section of Gikomba market, leaving owners of business counting losses as they were unable to rescue their properties. The government has now launched investigations to identify individuals believed to be behind the current burning down of property at Gikomba market. The government is also considering relocating Gikomba traders to other markets.
We urge to be cooperative with the security agencies, with our intelligence agencies, so that we can at last bring these guys who caused this to book and face justice.
In the meantime, the government will provide compensation to nearly 400 households who were displaced after their properties were destroyed in Thursday's fire incident.
We will do the final infrastructure around here, a perimeter wall, so that we isolate, and we are promised by the community here that this is a building that is going to absorb in the upward of 10,000 of the people here.
Small business owners who were hard hit by the fire were left staring at their properties as they went up in smoke.
Tutaenda wapi na tutafanya nini? Mimi nimetoka Kisumu nikuje nifanye hiyo biashara. Nimesomeza watoto na hiyo biashara. Watoto wapati kazi na hiyo biashara. Mimi nahangaika, naleta mali yangu kidogo ya kukula, inapotea na moto.
Sasa sisi mbele yote hizo sita zimechomeka zote, mpaka nikabaki tu niko nayo kwa mkono. Watoto pia niko nao kwa nyumba, waendi shule. nyumba pia inaishi kwa nyumba wenyewe, inafaa nilipe. Corona pia ndio hiyo.
The tragedy that has hit Gikomba market once again has left these traders counting losses amounting to millions of shillings and now seeking answers from the government as to who is responsible for these perennial fires. Eli Logova, TV47 from Gikomba market in Nairobi.
And to another story right here, the Ruto allies can't register Jubilee Asili as declared by the Registrar of Political Parties, Madam Anne Nderito. And this is a story that has been captured on page 5 of the People's Daily and page 7 of the Standard newspaper. And further to this, and without prejudice, upon the registration of the party, the names shall not be in line with Article 91 of the Constitution. The Registrar of Political Parties, Anne Nderito, has rejected this request by the legislature's ally to Deputy President William Ruto in regards to registering the Jubilee Asili party. Nderito was responding and indeed to this appeal as an over-city business person who reserved the name Jubilee Asili for possible political outfit, that is Mr. James Simiu, and politicians supporting DP Ruto. They had a highly publicized meeting, that is last week, in regards to Jubilee Asili, that got tongues wagging and questions came on board on what this is all about, whether it was a counter for the official Jubilee party and whether it was a polite way of them saying that now they are proceeding to exit the stage and they will take their own direction. And yes, what do you make of the events of the Jubilee Asili and the fact that we still see the Deputy President William Ruto posing with the president as though nothing is wrong and Jubilee is intact?
I don't think the president has a problem in Jubilee, because those who have a problem are the ones who should either leave Jubilee or find a way of dealing with their problems. When you hear people saying that they are creating another party and they are calling it Jubilee Asili Party, and then they are told to be supporters of DP William Ruto, yet DP William Ruto does not come to either openly support or deny the party, I think this is politics of cowardice. If you ask me, we have seen in the past politicians who know what they are doing. And when they decide that we are forming a party, they form it with a lot of courage and they move and they own it up. Now I hear they want to partner with another party that was formed the other day that has got, I think, 5 members. It's called TSP, the Social Party, something, the Service Party. We ain't even to know, but at least we know it's got yellow as one of its colors. So I think these are kicks of a dying horse. These people need to decide whether they're in Jubilee or they're out of Jubilee. But even the registrar refusing to register it was perfect, because even the logo looks the same. It looks similar to the other symbol of the Jubilee Party. So that should not be allowed and it cannot happen.
Okay,
Yeah.
and there we are. And speaking of matters politics right here in the country and whether we are good enough or set to go for an election, let's overlook this cartoon edition and take a look at this story. Lest we forget, IEBC requires urgent fixing. This is an editorial fix. And in the countdown to the last general election, one of the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission bodies, that IEBC official, warned on a flawed and disastrous poll if certain measures were not put in place. And later that came to pass after the caution was ignored. So here we are staring at talks of a referendum. So in the event that we go for a referendum, even in the event that we go to 2022 polls with the very same IEBC as it's formed right now, where does it place us? Remember also, it does not meet the quorum or the threshold expected. Okay, well, it could meet that, but then the numbers, the officials are not in the actual number that is expected constitutionally. So where does it place us, even as we overlook this?
I don't think IEBC is the problem, if you ask me.
Yeah.
India, the biggest democracy in the world, has got 3 commissioners that run their independent electoral body. And you know, those elections, when they are held, hundreds of millions of people go to the voters, to the ballot. If you ask me, what Kenya needs is not even a very strong IEBC or even what you call the voting gadgets and everything. What we need, you've been seeing with this COVID, there's a small thermometer that is being used to test people's temperatures and to know whether they are fit enough to walk into a building or not. What Kenya needs is a similar gadget to test the sanity of those people who are queuing to vote. Because surely if people can wake up one morning and queue for so many hours from 4 a.m. to cast their ballot at around 2 p.m. in the afternoon for somebody who they say, this is our thief, and we are happy with our thief, or for somebody who has got serious integrity records and they say that this is the person that we are voting for. So IEBC is not a problem. If tomorrow we go into BBI and we decide that we already have a bad economy and we want to increase the number, for example, of nominated MPs, if that's going to be one of the proposals that will be passed, then it tells you that those people, what they need is not a strong IEBC. What those people need is something to test whether they are normal in the head. Because I think we've been having the wrong people voting throughout.
All right, there you go. And now let's proceed to another story right here also. Muthama Kalonzo clash is just history repeating itself. And here we are. We've seen the problems and the troubles that are ongoing at that level of Wiper Party. And once a teammate, two Ukambani leaders now back separate horses ahead of 2022. And when we're talking about these separate horses, we're talking about President Uhuru Kenyatta and the joining in of Wiper Party, of course, with Jubilee Party, and also that aspect where Muthama now in a way supports the DP, that is Deputy President William Ruto. And in an argument, there was that of course, move by Kalonzo Musyoka or the Wiper Party declaring that they are going to take Muthama through the disciplinary measures in what is considered to have been going against the party rules. But then again, Muthama says that I dropped you guys long time ago, then why is it that we are talking about you disciplining me? So here we are, Muthama and Kalonzo fragile allyship, of course, cracked when there was a crack that was witnessed in 2017. I do not know why it is that Wiper or Kalonzo Musyoka was not alive to this fact, to a point of saying that they are going to take Muthama through disciplinary measures. So yes, here we are with this politics.
I think these are, if you ask me, internal party problems, just like we have in Jubilee, like we have in, I think it's happening across all parties. Look at ANC, look at Jubilee, look at now this is Wiper. I think it's only the insignificant parties like the TSP that are not having internal wrangles. So it's normal, it's healthy in any democracy. Let them fight within themselves. You saw what happened in Ford Kenya the other day. Yeah. They were fighting. We are yet to get the results of who won inside the fighting. But once they are done, we'll get to a point where we shall have in this country, and I've always wished that Kenya had not more than 5 political parties that are well funded, because when you have not more than 5 political parties and you have over 47 or 42 tribes in this country, what it would mean is that people would be forced, by virtue of the fact that there are fewer parties, to belong to national parties for that matter. Because when you look at, for example, now Wiper, they struggle to look for officials who would make them look like they have the face of Kenya, because the bulk of their MPs are from one region. Same case with Ford Kenya, same case with ANC. So we need to get to the point where our parties look more national, like ODM and Jubilee, and the only way to do that is to reduce the number of parties so that people are forced to fit into parties that have a national outlook. Yeah.
All right, let's also go back to some bit of matters COVID-19, and there is an interesting story captured right here where they say that ambulances are now reaping big from the pandemic. Of course, this is something that would have been expected. Private entities are capitalizing on the virus and purporting to offer evacuation services at almost 3 times the charges. And the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic has been a blessing in disguise to these ambulance operators, who are now charging almost triple to ferry suspected victims to hospitals. Before the pandemic struck in mid-March this year, private ambulances services were not assured of getting clients on a daily basis. But 3 months later, or 3 months down the line, it is a whole different affair. So while COVID is considered to be trouble for many, there are others who are also reaping big. And is this fair? And should the government be having ways of ensuring that they're able to balance this and curb such occurrences? Because if we're going to get charges at triple the price, it is pretty much unfortunate at this time where Kenyans are grappling with the economy.
It's not just the ambulances. Remember, there was a committee that spent 4 million shillings on airtime. Yeah. We tried to do the calculation. It was coming to about 4,000 shillings per person.
They still dispute that to date.
I think if you were to put 4,000 shillings in my phone as airtime, it would become too heavy to fit in my pocket. But that happened. There were people who alleged that they were able to consume 4,000 shillings on airtime. I don't know what they were calling and where they were calling. I think calls to Corona itself are very expensive. They are charged at premium if you decide to call Corona itself. So that happened, and we saw ambulances being, I mean, there was teas and coffees for another huge amount of millions. If you ask me, this country is made of profiteers. People who are out there to make profit out of every single situation. And thank God that Kenyans are not dying as much, because I'm sure there were Kenyans who are even preparing to start making coffins and selling, because people are looking at the deaths in Brazil and thinking if those deaths were here, they would have a whole complete coffin factory where they would just make coffins and make money out of it. So Corona for many people is not a pandemic that they wish would end without them making a coin out of it, and that's the most unfortunate situation.
Pretty much unfortunate indeed, and no regulations to ensure that we curb that. Let's come to this story. Of course, it's COVID-19. Still, the DP, that is Deputy President William Ruto, urges Kenyans to observe government COVID-19 guidelines, and he's now out here speaking. I mean, for a while he had been silent, but officially we've seen him coming out, trying to sensitize Kenyans and also meeting religious leaders in regards to the same, and also having talks on how best we can be able to reopen. Away from that, there's been so much drama on matters budgets across the country, especially this one in Nairobi County, and we witnessed differences yesterday that marred the tabling of Nairobi city budget. The Nairobi County budget was not tabled in the County Assembly yesterday following sharp differences between the MCAs allied to Nairobi Governor Mike Mbuvi Sonko and those allied to Speaker Beatrice Elachi. Our team also worked on that particular story. Now let's take a look at what played out in regards to the same, and we come back react to the same.
The squabbles outside Nairobi County Assembly Thursday morning. Daggers drawn. At least not for the first time, chaos are being witnessed in this assembly, and of course, notable MCAs running the show. Thursday's dispute was anchored on the Nairobi County budgetary allocation for the year 2020-2021. House Speaker Beatrice Elachi and about 40 MCAs were forced to spend part of their night at the assembly after receiving information that goons had been hired to bar them from accessing the chambers when the budget was expected to be read.
Abdi Hassan Guyo, together with Paul Kados and some people that they were calling Jubilee bigwigs, I do not know them, had a meeting last night at Kasolin, and they said that they have to come here at 4 a.m. So we came, and our mandate here and our job here is just to protect that budget making process.
Some leaders, including Abdi Guyo, were arrested and taken to Central Police Station for being behind the chaos. MCAs who are opposing the 26.4 billion shillings allocation to the Nairobi Metropolitan Services were locked out.
Wale wengi ni wale tu hawajakuja kwa sababu wataki maneno ya vita. Sisi tumejitolea kwa sababu tunajua kuna serikali.
A faction of the MCAs want the budget to the NMS slashed and were determined to stop the budget reading that eventually did not take place. The speaker was locked inside the assembly while some MCAs were demanding entry.
The money that is allocated for them to change Nairobi, we are all working for the benefits of Nairobians. So we cannot keep fighting and make Nairobi a battlefield where we are fighting over taxpayers' money. It is quite unfortunate and impossible.
Ile ilipitishwa na treasury, after kusikizana na treasury na president na sisi county, hiyo ndio budget itapita. Ile president anataka ambayo amepiga hesabu na akaona itasaidia NMS ifanye kazi. Hakuna kitu kingine kitafanyika hapa.
The dispute between the county government and the NMS continues to exacerbate. 6 days ago, the High Court dealt a blow to the deed of transfer of functions from the county to the national government. The court ruled that the deal was unlawful and gave the national government 90 days to rectify the illegality.
As you can see, I've been denied entry. and with no prior communication, I don't know what is happening. I'm just being told that the people who are inside are enough.
Tumekuwa hapa na tutakaa hapa mpaka tupitishe ile kitu rais ambayo alisema tupitishe, and that is what we are fighting for.
The Labour Court has also suspended a Gazette notice by the NMS boss Major General Mohamed Badi that appointed new members to the Nairobi Water and Sewerage Company Board. Mwangi Maina, TV47, Nairobi.
I mean, Nairobi has been treated to so much drama so far. Ben?
I think there was a time when Raila Amolo Odinga said that we need to raise the bar in terms of the caliber of MCAs that are elected. And some people thought that he's being elitist and he's trying to make sure that people do not vote for people who are not connected to the ground. But I agree with him. I agree with him totally. The biggest challenge we are having with these MCAs here is that right now, instead of being MCAs, they are behaving like goons for hire. We all want a good Nairobi. And when you see people lining up and having a problem with 26 whatever billion being allocated towards the development of the city, then you realize that those people are not progressive. They are just playing goon politics. They are being used the same way you would hire goons from the streets to come and do unfortunate work. We know that for the longest time, the Honorable Mike Sonko Mbuvi alikuwa ameshindwa na Nairobi. We have seen what he has done. We have seen what he has not done. NMS came in. It's been barely 3-4 months, and we can see a difference in our city. So as Nairobians, we don't really care who is running the show as long as we get services for the taxes that we are paying. And it's unfortunate that we would have such kind of people being said to be the leaders who are MCAs. And let me make it clear, because people still keep thinking that when an education minimum level is set, it's just making the city elitist. I have a son who is in class 7, and every time we do maths with him, I know the maths doesn't go beyond 5, 6, 7 billion. Okay, it doesn't go beyond. It doesn't go beyond 500,000-600,000. At most, my son does not calculate for more than 10 million shillings. Now, for a goon or for someone who dropped at class 3, sitting to audit 26 billion, they can't even understand how you would have 9 zeros following another figure, because they never sat. I mean, at Form 4, we never did any maths that went beyond 5-6 billion at Form 4. So for anybody who dropped out at Form 4, who left at Form 4, sitting also at the county assembly to audit 26 billion, a figure that they are seeing for the first time. They have never seen such figure written anywhere else. It is a huge problem.
Is it not the very same reason why they said it's okay, Sonko could not be the best person, but we can get somebody else in Polycarp Igathe or any other person who will deputize him, you know, who has a vast knowledge and such.
Yes. Igathe understands what it means to have 9 zeros following. Because if you ask people what is a billion, they'll not understand that a billion is 1,000 millions. And the minute you start breaking it down that way for people who got to class 3, class 4, it becomes a problem. And that's why they are shaking gates and saying mimi ni MCA. But you ask him MCA wa nini, what does it mean? What does oversight mean? They say tumekuja kupitisha budget. You ask them budget ni ya pesa ngapi? They tell you 26 billion. You ask them what does a billion look like? They don't understand what a billion looks like, because they've never sat in a class where they did any maths that was worth more than 5 million shillings. And this is the challenge that we have in Nairobi.
Speaking of oversight, at Ongeri, Sam Ongeri has been elected the chairman of the Senate Accounts Committee. We know very well that also Senate is what is put there to ensure that they oversight the activities at the level of the counties. And now Kisii Senator finally assumes role in Oversight House panel, ending 2 months of confusion following rejection of Ole Kina by ODM or his ODM party. So here we are. He got in and opposed. High Court halted the removal of Narok Senator Ledama Ole Kina from the committee, but later withdrew the case after mending fences with the ODM boss Raila Odinga. Marsabit Senator Hagura Gudana replaced Kiambu's Kimani Wamatangi in the new lineup that will serve for the remainder of the 12th Parliament's term. As you touch on this, I will also want you to touch on the the purge that has been going on within the Jubilee Party, also captured on the front page of the Standard newspaper, where they're talking about Uhuru kicks out more Ruto allies. To you.
The appointment of Senator Ongeri is both beautiful and ugly at the same time.
Okay.
Beautiful in the sense that he has a lot of experience, but ugly because we have young people who are equally qualified to hold that position. The nature of leadership is that it's fluid and transitional. That we need to be letting a younger generation take over these positions and to provide leadership. I think if I was Ongeri, I would have insisted on there being appointed a younger person, and then him comes and gives stewardship and maybe some kind of advice. It is in bad faith to have such a powerful Senate committee being headed by an old man his age, because then it does not create a position for younger people to learn the ropes and move and change things. Now, on the cleaning up of the Jubilee House, I don't think it's a problem. I mean, we do it in our own lives personally. In fact, I was joking the other day on my Facebook wall and saying, I have seen people who have had 3 different partners, in 5 years, wondering why politicians cannot stick together for 10 years. I mean, you've had 3 lovers in 5 years yourself as a Kenyan, or even more. And then you're wondering why politicians who have not even sired children together cannot stick together for 10 years. I think that's the nature of life. It keeps on moving, it keeps on changing. And if anybody today can say that in the last 5 years, I can name 3 X's, I think it's also fair to allow Jubilee to also create some X's here and there, and to be able to disagree here and there, because Jubilee has not sired children with anyone, and they've not lived in a house together with anyone. Yet we who are living with other people are unable to live with them. I mean, we've had people right now who have separated from their wives, having a problem with the president not getting along with the DP. I mean, if in our own personal lives we are not able to get along with people who are very close. I mean, some of us even have differences with our own brothers and sisters who are biologically ours, So why would the president, why would it be a problem if Jubilee has a problem within itself?
So how much is this of impact to the interest of the DP looking at 2022 and generally politically, and also his functioning now that he's working with the president within the government, and what is left of the people who are squarely waiting to get development, to fill that need of course, what would have informed them to proceed and elect Jubilee as a ruling party?
I think even the people who were kicked out of these committees wasted a lot of public resources and time. Because I remember when they were appointed at State House. In fact, there was no PG. They were just appointed at State House, and it was rubber stamped, and they were very excited. When it comes to the same party that appointed them, removing them, they are trying to fight the process of being removed. And I must congratulate Aden Duale, because when you look at the demeanor of Kipchumba Murkomen when he was kicked out, and contrast that with Aden Duale comes and says, it is well, I'm going to be a backbencher, this seat belongs to Kenyans. He's a person who understands his position in life, that this seat was actually a favor. Because when you think about the National Assembly, for example, there were so many other members of parliament who got in excess of 80, 90, 100,000 votes. Aden Duale in his Garissa did not get more than 30,000 votes, yet he's the leader of majority in that parliament. So he knows it's a privilege, he knows it's an honor, and he knows there are so many other deserving Kenyans who are supposed to occupy those seats.
But now substituting Aden Duale with Kimunya, I mean, something that people have faulted so much so, is like you're saying, out with the good and in with the bad. What do you make of that?
Is there a clean Kenyan politician? I do not support the appointment of Amos Kimunya, but at the same time, whether I support or not, they will do it anyway. They have always done what we do not want. But I have tried to think of that August House. I have tried to think of that Senate. I have tried to look for a leader I can say this is a man of integrity. And the few I thought were men of integrity stood before us live on TV cameras and told us Waititu is innocent. And others have stood and looked at us in the eyes and told us that Waiguru is innocent. And when you look at those people, then you ask yourself, which Kenyan is clean? Even the MCAs who are impeaching these governors, They are so hated by their own constituents, and they know they are not coming back, and they know they cannot be re-elected. So it is extremely difficult for us to say that we support this and this politician because none of them has shown us that they move on principle. Yep.
All right, there you go. And not before we wind up on this, because now that we've talked about Amos Kimunya, yes, and we also do not fail to remember his days when he was holding the docket of finance. And here we are, we're talking about the budget captured on page 6 of the People's Daily. And Treasury caught up in dicey financial situation as experts poke holes in the term, or in the move that, of course, terming it as an ambush aimed at twisting the parliament. So the National Treasury has been thrown into a state of confusion in push to have the supplementary budget 3 passed by the National Assembly. And yesterday evening, that is during an extended session for members to debate the budget. And here we are. I think you watch the proceedings, and there's a lot of confusion on the formation of the budget and also the timelines that we have and how genuine they are, and also the figures that are being projected.
I think for as long as you have people who are interested in a budget, making a vote on the same budget, there's a huge conflict of interest. We've had for years MPs, this is the time when they sneak in whatever allowances they want. And this is the time when they tell Treasury, now we've sneaked in this allowance. If you want us to pass this has to pass. And that's the hugest challenge. I think if only we had leaders who meant well for this nation, so that they would vote for the budget or fail to vote for it on the merits or demerits thereof, it would have been an excellent thing. But right now, the budget is voted for or voted against, depending on what interest it's serving to protect or to propel for other people. Yeah.
All right. As we get to wind up, we do not go without discussing the BBI politics that are still rife right here in the country. And now experts, well, this is something that they've argued even from before, or political elites sort of feel like we do not need to proceed and change the constitution, while others clamor for it. We still have the current constitution that has not been well executed. And even worse is that the country is grappling with matters finances from elections, that were from 2 elections, like on almost the same period after the annulment or after the, nullification of President Uhuru Kenyatta's win in 2017, and now proceeding to the dealings that we have right now as we try to grapple with COVID-19 and the fact that we are now talking about a referendum at a time that we are nigh for the 2022 elections. What would you make of this? Yet President Uhuru Kenyatta says that there is need for some changes, especially on what we have right now that does not serve the interests of the common mwananchi.
The only interest of the common mwananchi that we think should be captured in BBI is a reduction in the number of elected leaders that we have. We have such a huge burden that we are carrying. If it was a referendum to reduce the burden on mwananchi, then that would have been a good thing. But I think the only referendum that Kenya truly deserves is one referendum that will come and declare all the persons who are in political offices today unfit to hold public office, and we look for another fresh crop of leadership. I think that's the only referendum we need. Any other referendum that does not remove from us the leaders that we have today is not a good referendum. Yeah.
And the ills of the society, as we speak, the social ills that are happening right now as we are dealing with COVID-19. There's also one story here on violence against women, which Aidan, that is the Bungoma County Commissioner, Dr. Aidan Mohammed, sort of feels like should be criminalized. And we've had these talks, and today also is International Day for the Victims of Torture. We'll also be delving into that discussion. We'll want you to weigh in on such occurrences, social injustices that are happening right now as we are dealing with COVID-19. And the cases also that have been projected on pregnancies of teenage girls, most of them having been considered to have been raped anyway, and they do not have the confidence to come out and speak about this.
Wonderful. I think our education system has a problem from the beginning. It has not prepared the boy child for the challenges that are coming. And many of the men today are finding themselves in very awkward predicaments that they should never have found themselves in the first place. And it's because of their inability to deal with the predicaments that are coming today that you are seeing the things that are happening. We've seen sad stories of fathers raping their own daughters. This is unbelievable. It's unheard of. It should never be condoned. But at the same time, I think we need to get to the point where we interrogate how we are raising the children that we are raising, because that's where the problem is.
All right, thank you so much, Ben Kinuthia, lawyer and political analyst, for the great insights of the day. That was Newspaper Review alongside taking a look at the news stories of the day. It's now time that we cross over to a different segment altogether. We have some feedback right here, but I think I need to tell you this. And Kinyua Sami says, great words, all we have is politicians and all we have is a politician, and many people don't see that they follow their interests, thus why they keep changing their mind and lying to Mwananchi. Hezbon Onganga says that you should know that GNU has several MCAs and governors up to 2016. Well, they folded for... Okay, I think this is that GNU has several MCAs and governors up to 2016, and then folded from Jubilee, or to form, they folded together to form Jubilee. And I don't know what exactly he meant, but I think it was in regards to the Waiguru case that we were talking about. And Peter Miner is tuning in from Kahunguini. Thank you so much for watching. Steve Ngene and many more of you who've dropped in your feedback. And we cross over to a different segment altogether. Thank you so much for keeping me company. After this break, Morning Cafe is back with much more. right, welcome back to the broadcast, and it's that time where we discuss the pertinent issues, key issues in the society. We've been doing so much of politics, but also current affairs are key. And today is the 26th of Friday, June. You probably do not know this, but I will remind you, it is the International Day in support of victims of torture. So we take a look at all this, knowing very well that recently we've been talking about the issues of police brutality across the world that have been meted upon different people, especially as we try to instill measures that have been put on board to deal with COVID-19. That one, of course, is something that is considered as torture, and we've seen very many cases cropping up. And right here in the country, we have notable cases. We've seen people losing their lives. We have victims right here complaining of police brutality. The police too also feel like we've been very, brutal against them. So this is something that we need to converse around, on equal measures as we take a look at torture and what exactly torture is all about. So joining me this morning is Steve Isinta. He's an advocate of the High Court and also of IMLU Networks. Good to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
You're very welcome.
All right, and it's a special edition just for you, so we can learn everything and all that there is to learn about, torture and all that. It's pretty much important that a day has been set to commemorate this. That's a clear indication that there's need for us to come out as a society to ensure that we make torture a game of the past. So, as basic as I would want to ask, what is torture?
Thank you, Linda. Torture, by its very definition, under the United Nations Convention against torture, cruel, and other degrading treatment, is defined as that act, whether physical or mental or psychological act of oppressing someone in order to either coerce them to give some information, stop them from doing something, extract confessions. So it's an act which places it sort of lords over the victim in order to obtain something from them. So that's just a rough definition, and that the same definition is adopted by Section 4 of our Prevention of Torture Act of 2017.
And speaking of torture, one would want to know, does it go to that level where it's physical, or there are very many forms of torture?
Yes, like I told you, it's physical and also mental.
Mental, yes.
So of course it's again broken down. Now for physical, of course, you have things like the basic beatings. You have the basic, somebody's being told kneel down for a while, especially by public officers, including police officers. The psychological could be things like being kept away from your family for so long. Maybe if you are arrested by the police and then you're not taken through due process. You find maybe there are instances where the police can take someone and go around with him or her all over the town for like 6-7 hours. That is very psychological, psychologically traumatizing. So there are various ways, but mainly it is physical as well as mental.
Well, one would ask, why is it that Linda is asking such a basic question? Not as basic, because there are very many people who would have been going through torture without their knowledge that indeed this is torture, especially at that level of the family setup and everything. So that does this culminate or extend to the level of family before we now delve into the actual aspect of it?
Well, yes, I do understand that that's a question that has come out so many times. However, for the purposes of the torture we're speaking about under the United Convention, it's mainly to deal with public officers, because the need for that convention came up because there was a huge concern that citizens around the world were suffering due to oppression from government officers, especially the security forces. I don't want to be specific about police, because there are other forces which have coercive nature in terms of force. For example, we have Kenya Wildlife Officers. You've had instances where you hear people were found in a national game reserve, and then on suspicion of poaching, then you hear they were taken through so much torture, physical beatings, and maybe at the end of the day there was no evidence. It's just because they were found there, they're suspected, and maybe there's been a huge outcry about poaching. So you find such officers, when they encounter these people, instead of arresting them, then maybe they feel, oh, we don't have the evidence now, we've not found them with the trophies, game trophies, so they decide to be the judge, jury, and executioner. So they torture these people. By the time these people are handed over to the Kenya Police Service, the National Police Service, you find people have wounds, they have beatings, maybe they've been incarcerated illegally for several days, just in order to extract information or to be shown where these things are, if they exist. So For the law mainly applies for public offices. For the basic, let me not say call it basic, for the common torture you're asking about, like at home, or even at the workplace, that one is covered by other statutes, including the Penal Code. For example, for sexual harassment, of course, the Sexual Offences Act already covers it. But for the Prevention of Torture Act and the 1987 Convention Against Torture, it's mainly to deal with public officers, because it's also a tool to control abuse by public officers. Yes.
All right, and speaking of which, at some point I'll force you to go specific, of course, on the cases that we've witnessed right here in the country, but not before you probably just expound this further, because then you've captured or you've mentioned something to do with illegal torture, for that matter, or illegal approach on this.
All torture is illegal.
Yes. Now that is what I wanted to get clear, because at what point then, if of course this person has been captured illegally, I mean, there's a problem, they've probably done something that is against the law. I mean, at what level then should we enforce a torture? At what point does it become legal torture? I would wanted to ask that.
Well, Linda.
Yes, all it is
all
illegal.
of it is illegal, because torture by its very nature, it's degrading. And when you say something like, and many Kenyans say this, I'm not surprised that somebody has done something. You see, legally speaking, that doesn't exist. It is until proven guilty. I mean, that is a basic standard for all civilized society. Because at the same time, as we assume that this person is guilty by us saying he's guilty, if we don't take them through a process, what about next time? It is you who's being accused of something that you have not done. So because we already have systems, we're no longer in jungle law mode. We're in a mode where we have systems, we have institutions. And therefore, because we have placed ourselves in that system, by all of us obey the law, we believe, and we are supposed to obey the law. The same way you expect the government, your taxes to work, and the government to provide you services because you pay taxes. It means under the social foundations of law, sorry to digress a bit, but under social foundations of law, we've passed on our powers to a body politic, that is the government. Therefore, in the same vein, you cannot be obeying or saying that you subscribe to this notion of government, whereby now you obey the government, you pay taxes, you follow the law, you know that I'm not supposed to do this, this is what I'm supposed to do. And then on the other side, you want to now apply your own standards on issues like torture, like saying, oh, this person is a thief, we caught him in the act, let us lynch him, let us beat him up until atoyo simu, and all those kind of things. It is not allowed. All of this is because we cannot trust individuals to enforce the law as they wish. That is why we have institutions.
Okay.
Yes.
And speaking of the law, now that you are in the justice system, one would argue that again it's been a toll for again victims of torture to at least attain the justice after torture has been meted upon them. Why is this? I mean, what do you suppose informs all this, the drama that surrounds that, and to what point then does justice that become served, or at what point then would someone say that confidently, yes, this is torture that was meted upon me, or vice versa, and then finally justice has been served?
Good, that's a good question. Basically, the issue here is the challenges that come up with torture victims and our access to justice. The first and main impediment to access of justice to these victims is usually documentation. I mean, it is one thing, for example, to be, I'm not picking out on the National Police Service, but it's the common one that we hear every day. Because of their basic main interaction, they mainly interact with the society, with the wananchi. For example, if you encounter a police officer and they brutalize you in some way, maybe they beat you up and all that, you go and then maybe when you speak to someone, a friend, a colleague, whatever, what you'll be told, you'll find it's an attitude problem in Kenya. You find people will easily want to justify it by saying, oh, hata una bahati ukuvunjika mguu, you know, kuna mwingine ungepigwa hata risasi, watu unajua. And that to me is a very sad fact. So what happens is most people do not document. By the time the thing is coming out, either it's not time bad, of course, in criminal law justice system, there's no limitation of time in criminal offenses. However, if it takes too long, maybe the injuries have already healed or started healing. Therefore, you're unable to get a proper medical report to signify or to demonstrate that actually I suffered these injuries. So documentation is the first thing. But of course, that like I said, is brought up by the attitude issue. We feel. Secondly, it's the way our system has been operating.
Right.
You feel like, oh, this is a police officer, nothing will be done.
Will be done to them.
So
but
that
is it not the
historical.
case? Is it not? It is historical.
It is
something that
yes.
has been happening in the country, and reality is that we have seen this happening, and a
Yes.
majority of people have even gone to points of reporting at a very early stage. But again, it is the police, so nothing is normally done.
No, I know.
And if it is done, it's done in a very later case where you're already exhausted in following up on the same.
True. I agree with that. But throughout history, you'll see that society has triumphed over a lot of things.
Yeah.
Slavery, apartheid in South Africa. You remember, like in South Africa, apartheid was legal. It was in the laws.
Yeah.
No, now you can imagine if the people in South Africa, the Nelson Mandela's, the Steve Biko's, they decided that, oh, this is just nothing will happen.
Okay.
So for us, and that is why we have organizations such as IMLU in collaboration with others, they create a platform for victims of torture. And they also collaborate with people who we refer as human rights defenders who are now based in the various areas of the country. Especially, and I'm sure you know this, that informal settlements have the highest incidences or complaints of torture.
Yes.
Now, torture is a socio-economic issue. You and I, maybe when we're in our cars, or even walking, maybe the way you dress, maybe the way you dress, maybe the way your cameraman dresses, we might be treated differently from other members of society. Somebody sees you and they just feel, this one you can't mess with her.
In fact, there's something that there's a notion that they say, I don't know whether the safari boots, you know,
yes.
they call it the Sahara. Sometimes you're seen wearing a Sahara, automatically you're judged wrongly.
Yes, and that is sad. And you see, there's a particular demographic in Kenya, the youth, who are they bear the greatest brunt of torture.
Yeah.
And which is unfortunate because the youth are already suffering from issues of unemployment, disillusionment. You finish school, you don't know what's going to happen. You're just seeing statistics that too many graduates, so very few jobs. But anyway, back to the point. The issue is that when the documentation has not been done properly from the onset, it brings problems, even for organizations, which are human rights organizations which try to assist, because at some point they will need a medical report to be prepared. This person needs to see a counselor if the torture had a very huge impact on their psychology. The issues of lawyers, taking of witness statements.
And it's an expensive process for a majority of people. They'll tell you that. So sometimes they tend to give up. I mean, what is being done towards ensuring that these processes are not as expensive so that they do not get people shying away from proceeding to get them?
Thankfully, the law has cured that in a way, because under the law, apart from just reporting to the police, you also have the option of reporting to the Kenya National Commission for Human Rights.
Right.
And of course, you don't need to pay anything because that's a constitutional body. It's established by the Human Rights Act. And that issue, that aspect of giving options. And the third option is you can report to any other body. And this other body would include a body like IPOA. And IPOA has been at the forefront of trying to hold police, rogue policemen. I mean, we're not here to say all police are rogue. There are rogue elements in the system like every other system. I mean, whether even as lawyers, even journalists, there are rogue elements. So there are options under the law. But the problem is, like many other aspects of society, not just Kenya, like many other issues in society, it's also ignorance. But more than ignorance is normalizing of a culture. You understand? You know that in some cultures, in some communities in Kenya, despite it being illegal, FGM is still being practiced. Yes. So I mean, is it an issue that these people don't care? Or no. Most of it needs to do with education, sensitization, and those kind of things that will enable people to know that we don't need to normalize. You know, torture is very degrading and it's very stressful.
Which would have informed my next question, like how much, how many people are privy to the information that there are other bodies and organizations that can come in handy towards addressing these issues? I mean, how much sensitization has been done? How much civil education has been given to these people? We can talk about FGM and we say that, you know, this one, so much has been done globally and information is out here. They have gone all the way to the rural areas to ensure that this is disseminated to the people. But how much of information do the people have towards ensuring that, you know what, if torture is meted upon me, I know the right places to go to and I know that I'm going to get help?
Yes. First of all, I would need to tell you, in comparison with, for example, FGM promotion, like not promotion, sorry, FGM activism around stopping it, you find that compared to torture is not attractive. I'll have to say this. I mean, for many NGOs even, it's not attractive as a, for example, you know, when you bring in women rights, children rights, it's a truth that many people don't want to discuss. That, people will say, for example, how many times have you heard about activities around torture? Very few. Very few times. Very few. And maybe before today's show, it was very few. I mean, maybe
that's why I started by saying, I know you might not know this, but today is International Day for Victims.
So it just shows the malaise in our minds. Like we seem to categorize rights, which is very unfortunate, because all these rights are human rights, and human rights are inherent.
Is it because there's so much of a gray area on what exactly torture is? And I know we've said that all torture is illegal, but sometimes, you know, someone will say, we did this in self-defense, we did this because this person was a little bit, I mean, there's some bit of gray area.
The truth is, and I would even speak for fear of
being quoted,
being regarded as not being very good with even the organization that sponsored me for this show. I would say that, like I repeat, that by its nature, torture compared to FGM, even land rights do not get as much prominence. It is all about people are trying to get donor funding. So it's about the bottom line for some of these NGOs. Like which program are we going to come up with? Because torture, even by itself, is unanticipated ill. So therefore, it's very hard to attract. But you see, when you tell people FGM is prevalent in X community, it's very easy to get funding. So I think it's, but at the same time, I also take. I have to shift blame to government agencies, including constitutional bodies, because they have the mandate, they have the funding. NGOs cannot do this by themselves. For example, the Kenyan, I always believe that the Kenyan National Commission for Human Rights can come out strongly to support the efforts by the NGOs. It doesn't need to look like government versus NGOs over something that should be a common goal for everyone.
And now that we spoke about IMLU, and that is the Independent Medical Legal Unit, as of 2016, I'll go back and I'll expect you to tell us what progress we've made so far. As around 2016, and they had taken an overview of 5 years that indicated that 30.3% of Kenyans are victims of torture or ill treatment. I mean, what efforts have we done so far towards ensuring that this is a game of the past, much as we're still talking about it? And what if you know, what could be the numbers standing at right now?
Okay, I'll start with the last question, which is the numbers are not very clear right now, because there's a report being compiled as we speak in terms of now for the past 3 years, where were we, where are we now, where do we intend to go to? Now, on your first question, is the efforts that have been put include, like I told you, capacity building for human rights defenders. Capacity building, and that would include also lawyers. I mean, the lawyers who are actively on the ground. There's also issues of training of the same human rights defenders in terms of the specific ways of documentation of torture cases, because not all complaints may be worth taking to court, for example, because someone may say that I was stopped by a policeman. He asked for my driving license. He kept me there for 1 hour. Well, yes, the person, we have different levels of tolerance. So to someone else, they may be like, this guy ruined my day, and therefore, but then you see again, you may ask yourself, well, you're not the only person on that road. Therefore, I mean, this officer was probably dealing with other people. We don't know, maybe you were not very cooperative. Anyway, the efforts, and then that is the first step, capacity building of human rights defenders, including lawyers and all that. The second has also been the aspect of conducting public interest litigation towards bringing these cases to the fore. There's some cases that have been used as test cases, and there are also cases which are the NGO world has been sponsoring, especially IMLU, in compensation claims for the victims. There has also been seeking of improvements of legislation that already exists in terms of, for example, under the Prevention of Torture Act, there's the aspect of a fund that is supposed to be set up to compensate victims. As we speak, that has not yet. It's the cabinet secretary who's supposed to come up with regulations to govern that fund. However, of course, we now, like every other, I think Kenya, we have this we develop jurisprudence, I would say that. However, we also take a lot of time over very basic issues. For example, the Act speaks of a minister. You find the acts which speak of minister. When you go to court, you'll be told, oh, not yet, there's not yet a minister. It has to be amended to put the cabinet secretary and those kind of things. So yes, on those three fronts, I would say the NGO world is really trying, especially IMLU, yes.
All right, IMLU Executive Director at some point in time said that the rise was pointing out, and suddenly most of the was actually shooting up, and the incidents were ill treatment, torture, and they were actually happening in the context of enforcement of law, like you had rightfully put it.
Yes.
So we come back to the cases that we've witnessed right here in the country. We know the global fraternity, has been out there talking about the aspect of Black Lives Matter. This was, of course, propagated by what we saw, torture, police torture again. And we come back home. The numbers are high as it stands right now. As of, March, the very first times that we were reporting the cases of COVID-19, you realize that many people had died out of torture, in comparison to how many people had died because of COVID-19, which we were trying to contain. What do you make of this report?
Yeah, those reports are accurate, and sometimes I even feel it doesn't reflect the true picture, because the numbers are actually higher. Because there are those people who are tortured and they just go home. They feel lucky that they were not taken to a police cell, and somehow they may die out of complications. You may hear about it, you may never hear about it. So yes, the numbers are there. What happens is now, it's the coercion aspect of our security forces. I think it goes back to their training. Since time immemorial, we've been giving a lot of excuses on behalf of rogue police officers. The other day, we had the police spokesman speak about that. Oh, these policemen, maybe they are young, maybe they are undergoing a lot of pressure. We give a lot of excuses. Yet you and I, when we break the law, nobody is going to give us excuses on our behalf. So the prevalence comes by inaction, by the seniors in government, the people in government. Of course, we've seen the CS of Interior and Security has been very CS Matiang'i has tried. However, this goodwill needs to cascade down. It is more than just giving a press briefing or a presser. It goes beyond that. There need to be deliberate efforts towards reforming the police. Of course, back around 2014, I was part of discussions that were engaged in police working reforms group and all that. And those days it was very good, because it was a collaboration between the non-governmental organizations, civil society as you call it, and the security sector. And it was very good. But along the way, the momentum, once the laws started coming into place, and everybody assumed that things would be well. We forget that every year, the new people being recruited as policemen, have they internalized what you've been trying to do all these years? So that's also the thing. The culture needs to be a point where if a new police officer is joining, they've been trained about basic human rights, basic constitutional law in regard to Chapter 4 of the Constitution, so that some things are a no-brainer. But for now, I think the things of obeying of superior order or stress of work, for example.
And I think I wanted to ask that.
Yes,
as much as we might be very tough, some of these questions we need to ask, because if a policeman has undergone all these processes and they know very well what is expected of them, they are supposed to be out here protecting and serving the people, and then they do contrary. The other time, the DPP approved, just the other day actually, approved prosecution of police officer who shot the dead 13-year-old during curfew. And
Yasmin Moyo case.
And much more cases that have been talked about. And some of them actually looked at it as though it was unfair. So then you sit down and ask yourself, why? What could inform this move by them looking at this as though it's unfair?
Who's saying it's unfair? The Mwananchi or the police?
There are a couple of the police themselves. There are a couple of
they feel it's unfair for him to be arrested.
And then you'd ask, could there be some psychological undoing that is playing out in regards to the same, or what could be informing the fact that they still proceed to mate this torture upon victims, upon people, yet they know very well that there are other ways of dealing with this in law?
Well, you see, for me it would be very unfortunate if the police were to come out and speak of their psychological aspect as being
as an excuse.
Why? Simply because why would you give this person a gun in the first place if they're not well psychologically? This person needs help. But then again, Linda, you must know that from the cases I've observed so far about policemen who have been taken, every case, especially a case of murder, if a policeman is being if someone is being charged for murder, one of the things the High Court will always do is to ask that this person be taken for mental assessment. So it is an excuse people come up with. On behalf, I've not had any police officer claiming I was mentally unstable. I've not seen a medical report from a psychologist or a psychiatrist indicating that this person was not in control of their faculties when they were going for this operation. Some of it is just bad manners. We have to put it as it is. Some of it is just bad manners, and it is also the feeling throughout the course of time. With the exception of C.S. Matiang'i to an extent, most of the previous ministers and cabinet secretaries in charge of security, they've always been protecting. In fact, some of them, may rest in peace, Honorable Kaiseri, was always very, very clear that we are going to protect these officers. Some of these CSs made it very clear that they will not support IPOA in conducting of investigations. They even told police, don't listen to these people. So you see, when those kind of obstacles, they get into the mind of individual officers who may have the intention to be rogue or are already rogue, and they feel they are untouchable. But thankfully, at least with the DPP that we have right now, he is trying. He is trying to put people to account. IPOA is also doing a good job. In fact, the last office, the previous office of Macharia Njeru, who's now the JSC representative for lawyers, really did a good job.
And speaking of which, I will tell you that they have been frustrated in trying to see to it that people get justice, and we make torture a game of the past. Also, they have cited issues to do with, difficulties coming from the victims themselves. And, sometimes so much fear instilled by the police or the people who are making these torture forms, and so that you'll find victims opting out. And like you said, there are very many untold stories out there. What are we doing towards ensuring that people are able to come out and speak about it? Because you've said this is one of the biggest undoings of it.
I will not speak on behalf of IPOA for obvious reasons. However, I will speak from experience. It is that it is true, you cannot have 100% reporting. However, a lot, of course, that means a lot needs to be done in terms of sensitization. The only problem is that the people like you and I, let's call ourselves middle class, although that's another story altogether. We don't give a damn. We don't care. We don't care. So the problem is that you have this segment of the society which is down there, which is being told things like, for example, you're being told, oh, you need to come, we take your statement. This person is probably doing a job which is what is sustaining their family. So you find if he misses to go to the factory, his family will not have a meal for the day. So there are also socioeconomic realities. But the way to bridge that gap is even the media, you would support by making sure that these cases are given prominence. We pay less attention to politics. Of course, politics is important and it drives all of us in some way. But at the same time, we give more prominence. So that with time it's known that this is not something that we will take. I come from a community that was very huge or very serious, or big with things like FGM. But that has been going down over time. Yes, because you see, bad manners, time can cure it, but mostly it's the people themselves by intentionally provoking debate. Because it should not be. We should not be waiting for 26th of June to discuss torture. We can do better. We can set aside. It doesn't even need to be once a month, even every 3 months, to just discuss, to ask ourselves, where are we? Ask yourself a question, for example. You remember when the COVID, like you mentioned it, when COVID started and all that. You remember what happened at the ferry? Do you think that was torture?
Well, yes, it was.
It was torture. I mean, you saw how people were being told to lie down and all that. And even some of the people were making them do that. That's not even I saw NYS officers beating up on
this is not supposed to be your job.
You see, that is illegal. That is even illegal. We are so used to normalizing illegality. Officers were beating up, stopping people, telling them get out because it's past curfew hours. You remember the initial days? The police were so surprised when Matiang'i said everybody to bear their consequences. Then the police were saying that it is the government which bought us these whips. So why are we being blamed? So it tells you that we don't have public officers who can independently interpret the law. They just wait. They're like zombies. Some of them are like zombies. But the concealing factor is, I've dealt with officers nowadays, many officers, even on their own, they go for further training, they do short courses, even not to do with security. Somebody find an officer who has gone and done some diploma in IT, and you'll find most of those ones who seek for self-improvement are more likely to be very reasonable. But the typical officer who just gets into the force, waits for orders. And yet, even the National Police Service Act, the police standing orders themselves, they tell them, do not obey an unlawful order. So when somebody tells you, go and beat up people because they have flouted the curfew, that is torture. Somebody is telling you to commit an illegality.
You need to question that and say that, no, this is not how it should work.
And the funny thing, they are protected by law. In fact, the Act itself, the Prevention of Torture Act, it states very clearly, I think under Section 6, that no action shall be taken against the public officer who refuses to obey an order that is unlawful in nature, especially one that leads to torture. So the laws are there. It's not about that they don't know.
They don't know. But sometimes we push them to levels where what are they supposed to do? You are told as a country, you know, that 7 p.m. you're not supposed to be out, and then a police officer comes and finds you out. So there are two ways to eat. Let's take you to jail, or let's take you to quarantine. I mean, we're also looking at how well we can ensure that we limit the numbers of people who are being taken to, you know, correctional facilities and all that. So when we're talking about the aspect of the people now that you brought it and you say it is very pertinent, then we'd want to ask, again, these cases are reporting so much in the urban areas in comparison to the rural areas. What could be informing this?
Yes, when we say the urban areas, it's of course we're talking about the informal settlements mainly. Let's not hide from that fact. So for the urban areas, of course, you find, due to a lot of desperation, especially during the curfew, people are put between a rock and a hard place. I mean, let's say a place like Huruma. Now, someone is employed in town or somewhere away from Huruma or industrial area. Maybe their shift runs up to 6 o'clock or 5. I mean, that things that happen in Kenya that you will not believe. Now, they have a lot of trouble getting matatu, or they have to walk even so as to save a coin to be able to go and get something extra for the family. Now, that's why I said it's a socio-economic issue. And you will realize that even since the government extended the curfew hours from 7 to 9, they're still. But you see now, most of it is just. I'm saying it's more of, it goes beyond simply telling people you're breaking the law. Even if you're breaking the law, that law, that thing you're breaking, it means there's a law. Of course, you're breaking the law. That means the law is there. And the law does not say that you whip an adult, you whip even kids.
You're not supposed to.
You're not even supposed to beat your children.
We're running away from those days.
Yes. So why? There's no justification, and that is what we need to stop. We need to stop justifying. We need to stop saying we are pushing the police. It's not like, for example, if today we had 1,000 people or 1 million people holding an illegal demonstration in Nairobi, the police will not just start shooting. What will happen is they will ask for reinforcements. They'll say, "Oh, these people might overwhelm us." But what normally happens? Somebody throws tear gas. Okay, use of force is allowed under law, but in extreme circumstances. If the police officer's life is in danger, if it's in protection of another person also whose life is in danger, like if a policeman sees you, I'm stabbing you or I'm about to stab you, they can shoot me, or they can beat me up and whatever. I mean, that is justifiable use of force. But this thing of someone is probably even kneeling, lying on the floor, you're still trampling on them, that is not acceptable. It doesn't matter whether, there's no excuse for saying, oh, people were supposed to be at home by 7 or by 9 p.m. anyway. What were they doing? I would say that is what continues to perpetuate the culture of torture and other degrading treatment.
Now, would you say that the people are hypocritical in nature in how we have tried to address this? You noted that sometimes we talk about torture, you know, especially when we have seen it happening, you know, and now there's something to condemn, and then there's this policeman who's considered to be rogue and we have to condemn it. We condemn, and then after a while, there's so much silence. Just the other day, like a month ago, we had demonstrations, we had people out there in the streets complaining about this, and boom, this is not being discussed any longer. I mean, are we being hypocritical in how we are approaching this?
I would say yes, no. Yes, because of course we only talk about it for a while, and then when we realize internally that it doesn't affect us really, you know, we sometimes some people feel they need to be primary. They need to be primary recipients of an ill to really speak about it. No, because again I say it is not supposed to be a way of culture, us complaining about something. Okay, I mean people have so much other things to deal with. But again, I take the challenge back to platform. People like yourselves in the media, you should be able to assist in this, because an individual can only do it, can only go so far with it. Because I mean, I will make noise and sound and shout myself hoarse. Then what? If I don't have the platform, if I'm not able, for example, I'm privileged at least to speak about it from here. But there may be somebody who even has better ideas, better knowledge on this topic, but they are unable to because nobody takes them seriously. Yes.
Okay, now that we all acknowledge that indeed torture is wrong, torture is illegal, and there are effects to it, and people need to know that. Sometimes actually people overlook some of these things, and the long-term effects are pretty much unfortunate. So how then do we come and address this issue at the level whereby we have victims of torture, psychological impact that has been laid upon them, the negatives that comes out of it. So how do we get them back to understanding that yes, life has to move on?
Yes. That is a very, very onerous task. It's quite, because it's very progressional. I mean, you can't meet someone who has been tortured today and you just start talking to them it's okay, you're going to be fine, you'll survive. I mean, many psychologists will tell you that some of these things even go for years in terms of the impact. And also there's a primary victim, and then there's a secondary victim. For example, there are children who have seen their parents being, you see, if police break into my house and my daughters see me being beaten up, they may not say it, but it would scar them forever. So there are various angles to look at this. But the problem, of course, now it is now for resources, for example. And also the question is, who does it and how do they do it? As much as the laws are there, we've realized that the government may not have the emotional stamina, if any at all, to go through to the last mile in terms of following up on cases. That's why the private, the activists and the NGOs come up to assist in terms of now bridging that gap, because the gap is there. But a lot needs to be done, because these NGOs, they also have capacity challenges. You find that with time, there's a time where Kenya's rating in the world in terms of economics was upgraded. And of course now that has a ripple effect even in terms of donor funding for activities. You'll be told that, oh, you guys now have a 2010 constitution. You have a new constitution which has created very many institutions. We've been giving funds towards support of these institutions to be able to be up and running. We don't think this budget that you have is, they slash it. So of course it constrains these NGOs. So a lot needs to be done. Even as we talk about money, I think more awareness out there and more reporting would help a lot.
All right, speaking of which, if you would paint a picture of what the situation is like, I know we're still waiting for the numbers, but you suppose that it is that grievous? Is it a ticking time bomb?
I hold a different view. There's been improvement, but where I agree with the people in the sector is that even one is not good. Even one, we should get to a point where it's zero. Yes, because one life lost or one limb lost is not good. It's not good. So there's a lot needs to be done. I'm not one who always wants to focus on numbers, because at what point will we say it's okay? When you start talking statistics, we'll say, oh, at least, and then we lounge and say, oh, it's not as bad as 5 years ago. But no, up to the last point where we say, if a policeman or if a public officer is going to use violence, it has to be justified. That is the day I'll be happy, because this thing of saying, oh, last year it was 30,000 people, today is 3 people. Why these 3 people? They mean something. So yes.
All right, and now speaking of justification, and there are instances where we've seen communities justifying why some policemen have had to be rogue and even tight on others. Like for instance, now torture has been used to as a form of controlling communities and families. I don't know whether you're privy to that case of Katitu. There's one Katitu. There's a guy who was somewhere in Githurai. And anyway, some of these policemen who
the policeman who people protested after
he was arrested. And
yes,
every other time he said, like if you shoot one, the rest of the others will be scared. The youths down there will have to be, in line, and they will abide by the law. And in a way, it has been looked at as something that has worked. The residents will tell you that, since he came on board, we now have peace. At least we do not have these youths terrorizing us. I mean, how do you strike a balance in understanding that this could be a bad thing and equally a good thing?
Well, I'll just distinct that with you remember the Mungiki purge?
Yes.
I mean, will you sit there and tell me that all the young people who died, courtesy of when the late John Michuki was doing the purge on Mungiki, were all those deaths justified? Would you be able to tell? That is the point. You don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes people are being arrested because they're working with others. So it is very risky to give so much power to an individual to be the judge, jury, and executioner. Because even in Isili, you heard about this officer, I think they call him Rashid or something, who seems to be above the law.
Yeah.
The point is, everyone is above the law. Everyone is under the law. No one is above the law. But the moment we start saying, Linda can do it because this person, she will be resolving this issue.
Right.
That is wrong. That is wrong to me because we don't have the facts. We don't know if all these young men were actually criminals.
Right.
I'm sure even as you were growing up, your mother and your parents probably used to tell you about bad company. Did that make you a bad person?
No.
That's the thing. So I don't think we should not use justification of any form. And in any case, the law tells us it can never be justified. Even terrorism. That's another one.
Yeah.
That it's been used as justification that this person was a terrorist and all that. Who said that? Who said that? We've had instances where police officers who have been in deals with people, rogue police officers I must say, who have been in business deals with people, then things are set up and people are killed.
Yes.
Yeah, so I will not allow that train of thought in my mind to say that, it's justified or not. Let these people be taken. Because as an officer, as a police officer, for example, you have the tools of trade in terms of you can investigate, you can apprehend, and you can, in conjunction with the DPP, prosecute. I mean, build up a solid case. Like I told you when we were starting the show, we give a lot of excuses on behalf of people who break the law. When we say that these were, in fact, the common excuse is, the police, the courts will release them. Conduct proper investigations. Present these people to the courts. Argue. That is the thing. Because like the mantra in law says, you'd rather 10 people go in who are guilty than put in one innocent person. So that's the thing. When we start doing it correctly, very few will pass through.
All right.
Yes.
What would be the most noble way of dealing with these rogue officers or any other government officers that have done this? And for instance, we've seen some of them being transferred, from this area to a different area. Some of them have literally been sentenced to death, so something of the sort. So what would be the most? I mean, is it a tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye, something of the sort?
No.
Yeah.
The law to take its course.
Okay.
If this evidence, there was an officer, an OCS from one of the stations in Eastlands, the one who it's alleged, even he was the one sentenced to death, he took a suspect, put him inside a drum of water, torturing him to say to confess to some ill. Those things. I mean, how do you justify that?
Right.
How do you justify that? So for me, the law is very clear in terms of if you're guilty of torture, 25 years.
Right.
If you aid, abet, or in any way condone torture through any form or encourage, 15 years or 1 million imprisonment. It's there. So we don't need to be talking as if there's a vacuum in the law. There's no vacuum.
All right, and of course we remember that case yesterday in Nandi County where one person was shot.
In Lesos, yes.
Yes, in Lesos, and I mean it's a story that is still ongoing. Investigations are running into it, and of course the police was saying that this police officer has been suspended. Is suspension good enough? Maybe they're going to be there's going to be a transfer or anything. I mean, the delayment also on the investigations. Sincerely speaking, is there something that can be done towards fast tracking this?
You know, as a practitioner in the justice system, I'm always careful when we speak about the pace of things like investigations and even a court case, because when you are on the ground, the things you see that make pace not a priority per se. Because, for example, if you rushed investigations into a case, and then you don't do, then it becomes half-baked or it's not proper. What happens? This person will go scot-free. So sometimes that's why you see even some cases you hear IPOA or whichever agency, even corruption matters. Yesterday, people were sentenced, people were fined over $500 million each for a case something that happened in 2013.
Long time ago.
2014.
Eventually.
The wheels of justice grind slowly at times, but they grind for sure. So it is okay, and this is not unique to Kenya. You know, the problem I think sometimes as Kenyans, we like beating ourselves so hard, too many times, and yet we forget to look at, even in more advanced democracies, even in the US, cases take long. And
but the biggest fear about that is that, again, as they take long, of course, there are altercations that would play in between the people who are going to, interfere with the processes of justice. And at some point in time, you had, I mean, in this particular case, people pulling out of the case and saying that, you know what, let me just withdraw this case. Because, well, within that, as the wheels of justice continue grinding, you find that, again, the threats are meted upon these family members. You know, it affects the larger picture of the family. And they sort of feel like, you know, there's no need of us going through this. It's more torture for us as we seek that justice.
Well, the truth is, there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of bringing in other elements that goes towards supporting victims of torture. For example, there's the Witness Protection Act. We maybe didn't know, but we have the Witness Protection Agency, which is supposed to be doing a job. But again, there's issues of funding. They're not well equipped to do all this. I think for the Witness Protection Agency, it was more of putting the cart before the horse. There was a rush to create the agency before proper capacity building was done. In terms of the agency itself, resources, I mean, you're going to protect a witness. Do you have enough safe houses? For example, a witness who has undergone torture in Nairobi with police officers, and then you tell him or her that she's going to be housed in a safe house in Kiambu. They feel like, oh no. Yeah, and then there's also that aspect of neutrality. At what point do I have confidence in police investigating police? Yes, but that's the thing is now because of people like IPOA, you're able to now place more trust. But I get the sense of hopelessness, and that is there. That is there in terms of even in civil matters generally. I think it's more of the tolerance levels of a person and how determined somebody is, because if someone is tortured, we can't force them to go ahead up to the end. Our work is simply to assist them, document, if possible, go to court to seek compensation. If they give up along the way, then you can't blame anyone else. I mean, and I can't also blame the victim. We can't do victim shaming here and say, oh no, you were not serious. We understand. But like I said, a lot needs to be done. We need to have more psychologists, counseling psychologists, that one, psychiatrists. We need to have doctors who are available, whether government or in the NGO world, who are ready and available. There need to be centers. A lot of, like you said, civic education needs to be done, information sharing, so that people know that if this happens to me, like, I'm sorry to use this example, but for rape victims, nowadays I see there's a lot of even what to do in case it happens to you. So those kind of what are they called? Well, those kind of aspects are very crucial and critical for things like torture, because it's a whole system. It's not this thing or this thing. They are all correlated. There's a domino effect. If one doesn't work, the rest don't work. Yes. So
all right. Sometimes one would want to say that, torture has been waited for me. You've sought justice, but you know, sometimes you look at the kinds of torture, and they were probably grievous to a terrible nature. The likes of course, Honorable Matiba, his soul rest rest in peace, would tell you how torture can be at some point in time. So rehabilitative care and critical care is important to us, ensuring that you rebuild the lives of these torture survivors. So, I mean, do we have such programs that are actively ongoing, so that at least, in as much as maybe you say justice is about being, awarded millions and billions of shillings, I mean, at least they're able to take care of you critically and mentally, ensure that you're stable?
Well, that is what we're talking about earlier, in terms of the fund. The law says that the fund shall be established, but then the fund is subject to the minister responsible for that, in implementing the act, to ensure. They talk about Minister for Justice. In this constitution of ours, there's no Minister for Justice. You understand? So we don't know whether the framers or the drafters didn't know that, or the anticipation. But again, you see, the appointment of cabinet, creation of cabinet positions is more to the discretion of the party or the president who is in power. So there are those simple tweaks that we need to come up with. It may need to deal with things like amending the law somewhere, just to say remove this word. Let the act just say the fund will be established, and the funds will come from the contingency fund, consolidated fund. The exchequer will be paying it. But specifically to your issue of compensation, yes, you can follow. Even though the act the fund does not become operational, you can still go under the constitution and seek compensation for like this, a constitutional petition seeking for compensation for ills conducted against you. But for the NGO world, I would. From my experience, I know that, I mean, people cannot be compensated. It's only the aggressor who can compensate. But of course, there are streams, the programs which IMLU included have been trying to do, whereby even as we're taking up the case, we look at the socio-economic angles, psychological counseling. If someone had a business and maybe they are unable to do the business, like there was the case of the hawkers. There's a hawker who was killed, and then some county officers were prosecuted for this. And I think the case is ongoing. Like that one, I am aware that one of the victims, the widows the families, they were being supported, but it can only go so far, because it's very difficult to justify such funding from your donors. Yes. Okay, well, that's interesting. Let's pick up the words of the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres. He says that torturers must never be allowed to get away with their crimes, and systems that enable torture should be dismantled or transformed. Torture is a crime against humanity. So what is so special about this year's celebrations? Yes. Of course, first of all, it's just to honor the victims of torture, just to ensure that their suffering is not in vain. And the second, and also very important, is to take stock of where we are from as far back as 1987, when the convention became effective. Kenya ratified it and brought it into Kenyan law in 1997. Interestingly, just for information purposes, in East Africa, all countries, it's except Tanzania, have ratified the treaty. So it just shows you that of all continents, it's Africa mainly which still has issues. There are countries that have assented to it, but they have not ratified. They're still trying to give excuses why it's not in the law. But I'm not saying it's an African problem per se. The only thing is regimes that do not care about making torture fully illegal in their systems are usually authoritarian in nature. So it's about power. Torture is about power. Power between the aggressor, power of the aggressor over the victim. Making sure that I am in charge. And usually for me, I think those are people with low self-esteem. I mean, why do I need to beat you up? You're already there, you're helpless, and I'm still... And again, you're proceeding to beat me up and all that. Yes, indeed. All right, so your message to the people, the victims of torture, the people out there, I think you said it's pretty much important that we come out and speak against these ills of the society. Exactly. So I mean, you probably address this camera as you speak to them, and of course your parting shots. Yes, so what I want to say that it is very important, if you're a torture survivor, you, as soon as possible, you document it, you seek assistance in documentation. If the same has been perpetrated by a public officer, if you're in doubt, you report, you should report to the police. But if you feel like you may not get support there, you can approach the Kenya National Commission for Human Rights. There are also various organizations, including the Independent Medical Legal Unit, which would be able to support you in ways and try to give you justice. Yes.
All right, thank you so much, Steve Isinta, Advocate of the High Court and of IMLU Network. It was great having you this morning. I don't know whether we have this story, Mr. Director, so we can proceed. Leave the people, just update them on what happened in Leso's protest yesterday, and we take a look at that particular story as we cross over to a different segment altogether. Nancy is on standby with Matters Entertainment. We say Fridays can never be complete if we do not get to feel the entertainment vibe. So if we're not going to have that story, not a problem. I mean, it's still ongoing, and we'll be taking a look at that. Yes, the Nandi protest stories. Yes, and these are two people who were killed in Leso's protest, and indeed they were shot dead at Nandi County after police clashed with demonstrators in the area. The demonstrators who torched a police house were protesting the arrest of a boda operator who had flouted COVID-19 rules, and that story was compiled by our very own Calvin Chitwa. Let's take a look at it as we say kwaheri on this particular segment.
The protesters claimed the man who was identified as Lazarus Tirop was shot dead at Leso's Trading Center following an argument with police officers who had arrested a boda operator for not wearing a mask. The man is said to have been shot and killed instantly by the police officer who fired at him while he was trying to negotiate for the release of the arrested man.
Tunataka maskari wote ambao wako Lesosi hii wote, hata moja asibaki, tuanze mpya.
Pikipiki zenye ziko huko kwa polisi ni mingi. Kama sasa hizi pikipiki ni kama ni sawa, kwa sababu watu wa bodaboda wanafanyia hawa kazi. Tunataka haki.
Nandi County Commissioner Olaka Kutswa calmed the protesters, promising them action will be taken.
Mambo imeulizwa ya transfer, hiyo tumekubaliana ni leo. Sina mnayo.
Nandi County leaders led by Governor Stephen Sang, Senator Samson Cherargei, and Nandi Hills MP Alfred Keter have condemned the incident and demanded the immediate arrest of the police officer involved in the killing.
Mapolisi hawa hapa saa hii wote wataondolewa hapa. Haiwezekani hawatabaki.
According to Anne Makori, the chairperson of the Independent Policing Oversight Authority, they have already dispatched a rapid response investigation team at the scene that has initiated investigations into the matter with a view of establishing how the shooting happened and if the force used was necessary. Calvin Chitwa, TV47, Nandi County.
We are giving you fresh vibes from East and Central Africa. We'll be talking about the stagnation. We'll be discussing the entertainment industry. That is something you guys really need to watch out for. I mean, it's been a good week. Let's admit, in the entertainment scene, it's been a good week. The music has been good. The gossip has been good, and we're going to delve into that. But for now, we delve into the music. It is some continent. My God, it is so amazing. And right about now, we want to get into our next segment where I'm going to be talking with my guests about the Sheng Nation. But before we do that, there is a song I want us to listen to which will guide us into our topic. The vibes, and today in studio I have with me two very nice looking gentlemen, and let me give them a chance to introduce themselves. Start here.
Okay, my name is Lian Kamene, alias Mchina, Instagram handle. I'm a student, University of Nairobi, College of Architecture and Engineering. I'm an Instagram model, an event marketer, and a brand promoter. Yeah.
Nice.
My name is Zach Khalifa, alias known as Yakuza in Instagram. I'm a student in MKU. I study business commerce, and I'm Instagram model. And yeah.
Wow, so basically they have spoken in English, but here is the gist. Nataka mbonge Sheng na mimi, naswa.
Niaje mami. Pia sisi bado looks. As in mtu atatuona afikirie haya wazungu wametoka wapi, lakini sisi ni watu wa mtaa, sisi ni Mamorio wa huku tu bado. Tumegrow Kenya since nikuwa mtoto. Yeah, mimi ni Mkamba personally. Yeah, nimegrow Kenya, nimegrow Umoja. Tumegrow na watu wa ethic kina SWAT, watu wa Mbogi Genje tangu tuko watoi, tumekuwa na wao shule moja. Yeah, like sisi ni watu wa huku.
Okay.
Nimetoka area moja na yeye 3560 mtaani. Tumekaa naye tumecheza na jamaa pia, tumesoma nao shule moja. Ni watu wetu mbaya sana, ni watu wa area mbaya.
Alright, fiti. So song yenye tumetaka kusikiza, we've been listening to a song by Mbogi Genje. The lyrics in that song, wow, to understand the meaning is tricky, and I just want these guys to interpret what this guy is saying, because Sheng is really becoming so diverse, honestly, in China.
Okay, kuna hiyo song ubeshte yetu anaitwa Militan. Anaongeanga Sheng, but sasa mostly amefanya kutohoa. According to high school, kutohoa ni kutumia words za language ingine, mnaitumia like mnailink na Kiswahili. Yeah, so most of the things hapo ametohoa, but all in all it's Sheng. Ina make sense kwa watu wengine.
So,
yeah, it's a hidden language.
So baroda ni nini? At least tujue hata anatry kusema nini kwa hiyo stanza. What I understand imekuja from the word bank. So baroda ni do. From Bank of Baroda.
By the way.
Yeah.
Watu wengi waelewage ni gani? Sheng si kila place Sheng ni same. Unaelewa kuna Sheng ya Madhari, Kibra, wapi ziko Bezmo Sao, Kayole. Sasa Sheng ni different. Ni tu understanding the same, lakini unajua word inaweza kuwa kuna rada, ni ziko mingi unaona. Na mnaweza sema kitu huko kirada unaweza shika unaona. I think uzi rada. Unaona?
Because Sheng ni tofauti. Okay, so according to your looks, you guys look like you can't even speak Swahili ama Sheng ama English. How has it been for you? Unaenda place maybe hata mtu anakudiscuss na Kiswahili anafikiria huyu ni Mchina hata shiki. How has that?
Yeah, like watu wengi mostly in Nairobi wako na perception ya like rangi ya mtu ina describe pesa yako nayo ama ina describe background yake. Kuna siku tushenda na umseta hapo tu archives tukoziwa Smoky, tukozo mjamaa hata kwanza tulimuuliza na English, tulimuuliza Smoky ni how much. Umse anatuambia Smoky ni 150 Smoky moja. Tukamwambia bro buda si tumetoka mtaa si ndio umo tunajua kitu ni ambao kwanza kashanga tumesema mbao umjamaa akamwambia shilingi nyingine ya 20 bob umse akasema tu ni sawa poleni nilikuwa ndani nyinyi wazungu.
So hivyo rangi ya sawa inafanya watu wa try kuwa scam sana.
Ina nini sana but all in all tumekuwa poa. Okay, so kwa hii ngoma ya Militant anasemanga vitu mob, anasemanga sijui kama mnaweza play your verse but anasemanga kama kuna verse anasema chapati na nyama zikikaa lazima azidishi, lakini si watu wengi wataelewa hiyo lugha. According to venye ameput hiyo verse watu watakuwa tu wana dance hata wajui ni nini anasema.
Because Sheng ni tofauti.
Yeah, Sheng ni tofauti. Kuna Sheng ya Githurai, kuna watu venye wanaongea Sheng moja like ni lahaja iko in a specific area. Yeah.
Okay. So being Instagram model, socialite, how is it? That pressure, because these guys have such a big following on social media. At least you can tell us how the pressure is.
Kind of pressure na si sana because hata like we get a lot of viewers, likes, na we appreciate the followers by the way. I like you all. So iko poa by the way. It's like unakuwa explore to some areas jafika maybe unaona. Yeah, at least we know of some people.
Yeah, Instagram has helped us sana cause like unapata we have something like that's what we do, like it's not even pressured in any way. And then we do brand promotions, we do event marketing. Unapata ukiwa shule like you can sustain yourself, like naweza ambia youths wengi like wajaribu kudive into social media. Itawa keep updated. Unajua siku hizi si watu wengi wanaendanga pale kwa TV kuwatch news, but ukiwa Twitter ukiingia hivi uone hashtags zina trend utajua ni nini zinaendelea. You'll keep yourself updated with the current activities. Iko na advantage mingi sana. Vitu ka event marketing, brand promotions, hizo ni vitu zinakuexpose na ni vitu zinakushikilianga we mwenyewe kama like a youth. Unajua sahi unapata sahi bado mko shule, hamna job, bado mnaendelea kusoma. Uta fully depend on parents kwa do because kuna time ingine unapatanga pia home si kupoa sana, so lazima pia uje venye utajitolea vitu zako huko nje. Like Nairobi huwezi sota. Ukiona mtu anasema amesota Nairobi ni venye yeye mwenyewe amejiamulia. That's what I normally say. Like Nairobi as long as unatumia akili yako huwezi sota, utawahi sota.
Nice.
Yeah.
Wow, umesikia kutoka kwa Mchina na Yakuza. And now before we go back into the music, we get into the entertainment game, yeah. A lot has been going on. Magic's Enga, for example, Alisu 69 that amemubia ngoma juu ya copyright ikatolewa YouTube, the song Maguba, but then it was taken down and then ikarudi. And The same Magix Enga alisema Uno, the beats of Uno belong to him. Uno was also chucked from YouTube, but later ikarudi. Recently, also Bahati's new song was chucked from YouTube na ikarudi because of copyright claims. Yakuza, what is the problem? Tuanze ya Magix ama the whole copyright situation? Yeah.
Sometimes mnaonaga zingine si exactly copyright. Unaweza pata music beats in the same but kuna twist at least. Unaona?
Yeah.
So mostly musician wengine ndio kuna copyright and sometimes unapataga music zingine kuna clip fulani I think kitambo kidogo. It was a clear copyright but wakusum yote cause that song ilikuwa kitambo so they made it better. Is it? Yeah.
Hizo vitu za copyright the fact that 6ix9ine alilipa Magix Enga ndio song ikwe put back that means that industry ya Kenya like it's so diverse. Kama mtu kama 6ix9ine ni mtu akona followers wengi sana USA. Akaamua kuchagua beats za Magix Enga like that means a lot. Hata kama alikuwa ameiba like it really means a lot. Inamaanisha like Kenya like we have the potential but sasa I don't know where the problem is. Like we really have that potential. Yeah.
So tusiachilie our potential.
Tusiachilie industry yetu. Tuendelee kusupport local artists wetu, si kusema ati songs zao ni trash, sijui ni nini. Hadi hizo zingine za USA za wapi zilianzia tu hapo. Hip hop ikianza wasi hadi walikuwa naikataa. Lakini sasa ndio imekuja kwa like the most widespread music genre in the industry yote ya trap, si ndio? Like tushikilie wasanii wetu, tuwa support. Yeah. That's all.
Nice. And so as we finish up, nataka mnipatie your last remarks and watu wanaweza wapataje social media, your handles.
As before nimekuambia naitwa Yakuza. Instagram you can find me in Yakuza. If you have anything to say or anything you want to know about entertainment, but though we do peer branding your clothes. Right now he's wearing
social media yangu Instagram unaweza nipata mchina @__. TikTok utanipata Lian. I'm a content creator like new tengeneza videos vines just for fun. Yeah, you can find me also on Facebook @KambaKidLee. Yeah, you'll share my contacts. Tunafanyanga promotions like right now nimevalishwa na Ray Labels na nywele tulifanywa na Man Cave, Castro's Man Cave. Yeah, that's the advantage of social media and influence. Like sit kona crowd sana. Yeah, watu wa age yetu mostly like we have such a crowd. Like hapo hivyo nayo tunaweza kubali.
All right.
Yeah.
Wow, such an amazing show here at TV47 where we are giving you Good Friday vibes. It has been real. It has been a good show. And of course, thank you so much for coming, Yakuza and China. I hope to see more of you on the show. And yeah, we started the show with Linda Alela, but this is how we call it quits. Until next time, guys. See ya. You can always follow us at TV47KE. Till next time, bye-bye.
World of M-Truck Solutions, your trusted provider for bulk SMSs. We also offer